Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. And I have for you here a uniquely annoying lefty losing it about a family having a private conversation about folks confused about their gender.
Hi, Harriet. Have you ever been paid to be hate crimed? Well, I have, so let me tell you about it. Okay, so yesterday I was at work serving this family that was sitting there like the three wise men. And then all of a sudden, out of the mom's mouth, I hear the trigger words, non-binary and gender fluid. Oop! And court is in session and my ears are turned on. Let's do this. So basically, the mom was trying to explain to the dad what it meant to be non-binary or gender fluid. After a few minutes go by, the dad responds in the same way that every guy that looks like him would and says, you know, I understand where they're coming from, but if you're biologically a male or a female, that's what you are. And then I'm standing there on display.
Just exhausting, draining. Now let's hear from a Democrat Congresswoman, Maxine Waters, who claims Republicans and those upset with the number of immigrants from Haiti being deposited into their small towns, well, they're just racist. There could be no other explanation.
Well, let me just say this, that Haitians have been the victims of, not only our country, but Canada and France for years, historically. They're black, they're poor. It's the poorest country in the hemisphere. They have been exploited, and it continues all the time. Yes, I think they're treated differently because they're black, because they are Haitians.
But here is a local in Springfield, Ohio, who doesn't really see it that way, and he doesn't exactly fit Maxine Waters' white supremacist race baiting talk. Let's hear from him.
I think it's kind of odd that a guy like me has to come out from doing what I do on a daily basis to have fun, because I see what's going on in these streets, and I see you guys just sitting up there in them comfy chairs and suits, and I'm getting out here every day. And I'm broadcasting this, and you guys are just sitting up there in suits or something. I really challenge you guys to get out here and do something. These Haitians are running into trash cans. They're running into buildings. They're running into... they flipping cars in the middle of the street. And I don't know how, y'all can be comfortable with this. I don't know, who's getting paid from this. I honestly feel like someone's getting paid from it in the background. You got a bunch of people on a bus getting dropped off at a gas station to come down here. I know a single mom that FaceTimed me this morning at the welfare office that really need something. And it's nothing but immigrants over there.
And here is Kamala Harris taking credit for giving temporary protection status to over 100,000 migrants from Haiti.
That is why, also, starting with our administration, we gave TPS, temporary protected status, to Haitian migrants, 55,000. And then more recently, we extended temporary protected status to over 100,000 Haitian migrants for that very reason, that they need support, they need protection.
Now, the Mail Online is reporting that Kamala Harris is prepping for the debate by practicing with an aide in an orange wig. No reports yet whether it's this guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the real president of the United States.
What an unbelievable experience it is. What a great show this could be. Instead, we've got an absolute idiot here running the show.
That's, of course, the great Shane Gillies, whose Trump is the best in the business, and he stayed in character there for 2 hours for that Kill Tony episode. Look it up. Thank me later. Most of it is too blue for a family show like this. Now to a lefty teacher losing it. This dude with the proud trans teacher shirt teaches in Rhode Island, and watch this totally sane and rational behaviour as he destroys a Trump sign.
Yes, my name is Henry Gardner, and I work at the Trump store on Post Road. Hit me with that guy out here threatening my life. He's got a piece of wood trying to hit me, and he's trying to tear my signs up.
And here is that same teacher claiming he is off on sick leave due to injuries caused by transphobia in the classroom.
School teacher, and I'm currently out on sick leave owing to injury in performance of job-related tasks in the workplace, caused by classroom transphobia and homophobia, owing to my own beliefs and opposition to the school-to-prison pipeline. This is a complicated situation, particularly because it is directly related to my gender identity and sexuality and homophobia in the classroom.
Good luck, kids. Now, we've seen the Gold Star families ignored by Biden and Kamala Harris. We've seen them attacked by the ugliest segments of the media and social media too. Yes, some lefties losing it are laying the boots into Gold Star families.
I am angry at the Gold Star families who invited Trump to Arlington because they decided in their adoration for Trump that it was okay to let Trump, his campaign staff, and his campaign team's videographer and photographer, on top of all of the aides and security, they invited them to Arlington to traipse over other people's children's graves.
Just gross and unhinged. Now, we always enjoy watching Bill Maher being schooled by his own guests, and that's precisely what the editor-in-chief of National Review did, Rich Lowry. Watch this.
It'd be easier to get rid of him because if he lost another election, that would be 2018, 2020, 2022, 2024. I would think, and I've certainly been the last one to say Trump's over now. Lots of people do. I was like, no, no, no. But I think this would be it for him. I think he'd still be, he's not like Joe Biden. He's not going to go peacefully and out to pasture. But Republicans will have had enough of Trump, not of Trumpism, but of Trump. And you'd be done with all that chaos.
You can't be certain of that, Bill. The one thing that's certain, if he loses, Kamala Harris will be president of the United States. And I wholly oppose almost every single one of her positions. I think she's a vacuous opportunist. I totally reject the idea that in the space of 48 hours, she went from a subpar vice president, everyone recognized as such, all of a sudden to the second coming of Barack Obama. It is preposterous.
And the lessons did not end there. Watch here as Lowry and H.R. McMaster school Maher, Democrat John Avlon, and the lefty audience.
We've got one guy saying we should pull out of NATO, right? We should not. Putin can do whatever the hell he wants. Basically, giving a yellow light to China on Taiwan. I mean, the autocratic alliance you warn about is in many cases rooting for Donald Trump because they think it leads to American division and decline. But the fact is that right now, if you're strong on national security, one party's leader seems to be trying to weaken NATO, and the other party has expanded it and strengthened it.
Except he's supposedly forced by Trump to do a withdrawal.
It was done badly.
Was totally incompetent, dishonorable, a disgrace. His presidency has not recovered from it since, and our position abroad hasn't recovered from it.
And I think you can draw a direct line from that disastrous, humiliating withdrawal to the reinvasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. I mean, I think what's weakness is what is provocative is the perception of weakness.
Now let's end Lefties losing it with comic Andy Haynes talking about why it's so much harder to live life as a lefty. This is actually pretty funny.
I am a liberal. I don't like it. It's not fun. We all know that. It's not fun. It's a full-time job. Conservatives, that must be so easy. You're not learning any pronouns. You're leaving your air conditioning on. You're throwing all your garbage in one hole. I'm out here. I'm like, did the compost go out? Is the compost out? How are the refugees? Are the refugees all right? What's the air quality index today? I remember last year in New York, January 15th, it was 75 degrees. And all of us New Yorkers, all of us liberal New Yorkers, we had to go outside and pretend that was bad. We had to go out on a beautiful January day and be like, this sucks, right? Climate change. I'm in a t-shirt. This is awful.
The one and only debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is on tomorrow, and let's take a quick look at the ABC moderators. David Muir and Lindsay Davis are hardly impartial. Here is just a little taste of their anti-Trump bias. These are comments from less than a month ago from Davis linking Trump to a white supremacist cause.
Former President Donald Trump is expected to go campaign in Howard, Michigan tomorrow. Many people are aware that a month ago in Howell, KKK protesters marched in the streets with the white robes on and suggested that they support Donald Trump. I'm curious if you make anything about that connection and him going in particular to Howell tomorrow.
Joining me now is Newsweek Senior Editor-at-Large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel Josh Hammer. Josh, that was a bizarre question from an ABC anchor. Will tomorrow's debate be a level playing field?
Probably not, if I had to guess. I mean, ABC News, of course, would be the same American media outlet that hires George Stephanopoulos to anchor its Sunday news show. The people will probably recall that George Stephanopoulos was one of the preeminent Clinton campaign staffers, along with Jimmy Carville, back in 1992. I mean, he is about as partisan a Democrat as it gets in all of the mainstream corporate media. This is not an objective outlet at all. Actually, Rita, if I think back, it was on the precipice of the 2020 presidential election. Wisconsin has become one of America's foremost swing states. It was an ABC News poll just a handful of days prior to the 2020 election that showed back then that Joe Biden was allegedly up by 17 points on Donald Trump in Wisconsin. The final margin of victory ended up being less than 1 point. So, I mean, there's definitely something in the water at ABC News. Fortunately for Donald Trump, you know, if he plays his cards right, it doesn't really matter, I think, how the moderators approach this. So, look, the moderators, Kamala Harris, Rita, they're going to do everything they can to steer the conversation to two topics in particular. They're going to do everything they can to steer the conversation to so-called our democracy, because they paint Donald Trump out to be a historical threat to the Constitution and all that we stand for. The near assassination of him a month and a half ago has not slowed them down at all. They have that issue, and then they have the abortion issue. If Donald Trump can quickly respond to those two and then pivot to all the other issues, namely immigration, the economy, inflation, and crime. Those are really the four issues right now. Those are the four issues that the American people tell pollsters they care most about, and Donald Trump is more trusted on each of those four issues. So if he can quickly pivot, so for example, on the question of our democracy, which I'm sure is going to come up at some point, all he has to do, Rita, is look into the camera and very straightforwardly and clearly say, there is one person on this stage whose Department of Justice is trying to incarcerate the opposition. And guess what? It's not me. And then immediately pivot to the economy, immigration, and so forth. If he can do that, he's going to be in great shape, I think.
I think so. And I think he also has to just resist talking, because the more Kamala talks, the more trouble she gets herself into. And I think that will be difficult for Donald Trump. But if he can restrain himself, it would be fantastic. The Mail Online is revealing that Kamala Harris is prepping for this debate by practicing against an aide in an orange wig. No reports yet whether it's this guy, my favourite Trump impersonator. What do you think about this? Is this a sign that she's taking it deadly seriously, or a sign that her campaign isn't really run by adults?
Well, I think that Kamala Harris is in serious trouble. I mean, Nate Silver, who runs 538, I mean, he's probably America's foremost political odds horse race prognosticator, essentially the best statistical analyst we have here. Now, he himself is a liberal-leaning guy. I mean, he calls it roughly straight, but no one doubts that Nate Silver is a liberal. You know, his model actually just a few hours ago actually changed to Donald Trump having about a 65 to 66% chance of winning the election. In fact, according to Nate Silver's current model, Donald Trump is favored in literally every single swing state right now: Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and all three of the big Rust Belt states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, especially Pennsylvania, which is the largest electoral college prize of them all, of all the swing states. So Donald Trump is actually in very good shape right now. And you know, there were a lot of people, Rita, who after they pulled the bloodless coup of Joe Biden and inserted the cackling communist from California, Kamala Harris, in Joe Biden's stead, there were a lot of people who started freaking out. Yes, the polls tied in there. You know, I have to say, I don't want to pat myself in the back too hard, but I was not one of them, because as you just said, the more people that actually listen to and hear Kamala Harris talk, it's like an immediate repulsion. I mean, it's like oil on water. The woman is just not likable. And she's obviously been profoundly terrible as an actual leader. You know, she's been vice president of one of the worst administrations in the entire history of the Republic. Her presidential campaign in 2020 bowed out well before the first votes were even cast in Iowa. I could go on here, but she's in big trouble. And what that means in concrete, tangible terms is that she has a lot on the line in this debate. So I'm not surprised that she's pulling out all these gimmicks, these stunts, the orange-haired wig or whatever there, because the stakes are really, really high for her. I would argue even higher than for Donald Trump himself.
I agree with you there. I think the polls, Trump always performs poorly in polls compared to where his support really is. If they're saying he's leading by 3, you can be sure he's probably leading by 8 or 9. Now, that's always been the experience with his numbers, including in 2020. Now, there's reports that Kamala Harris is looking to name hard-left Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison as the US's top copper campaign team has reportedly told Arab American leaders in Detroit that she could name Ellison, the special prosecutor in the George Floyd case, as Attorney General as part of her administration. Trump officials told Fox News Keith Ellison would be a natural fit in the Kamala Harris administration. Both are radical liberals who support ending cash bail and releasing violent criminals into American neighbourhoods. Do we take these reports seriously, Josh? She's already selected Tim Walz as her running mate. How much more radically left can her administration be?
Rita, I think you might be surprised, and God forbid, I think that I and my fellow Americans might be surprised come January in 2025 if, God forbid, this ticket actually prevails here. You know, Keith Ellison is not just a radical when it comes to so-called criminal justice reform, when it comes to ending cash bail, when it comes to jailbreak, when it comes to all these other post-George Floyd, post-racial reckoning left-wing agendas. You know, the man is also fundamentally an Islamist. I mean, he is as cozy and close with CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, as it gets. CAIR, by the way, is recognized by no less Muslim a country as the United Arab Emirates as a terrorist organization. Saudi Arabia, if I'm not mistaken, has taken similar steps as well. Unfortunately, much of the Democratic Party's elite class, their brass has not gotten the memo. Keith Ellison is about as pro-CAIR as it gets there. He's there in Minnesota. So is Tim Walz. That's Ilhan Omar's backyard there. So this is something I think of possibly a deliberate leak that the Harris-Walz campaign has probably done to try to gin up enthusiasm among their far-left, radically progressive, pro-Hamas base. They probably thought that the Democratic National Convention was actually too even-handed when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian issue, if I had to guess. So therefore, they're trying to kind of throw out some breadcrumbs to the radical base to try to get them excited for November. But no one should make any mistake about this. Keith Ellison would be an abominable attorney general of the United States. He's been a horrific attorney general in Minnesota. By the way, just real quick, one of the other names that I've heard floated in case it's not Keith Ellison for Kamala Harris's attorney general, God forbid, is a woman by the name of Sally Yates. Sally Yates made a lot of headlines in the first few days of the Trump administration back in January 2017, when she immediately instructed her subordinates in the Trump DOJ to not enforce Trump's big day one immigration order, which the media disingenuously called the so-called Muslim ban. So that is another leading contender for attorney general. It gives you an idea of what they're thinking about.
It's shocking because they are trying to tell the broader American public, not just those factions that you spoke of, that she is a centrist, she's a moderate, she's a safe pair of hands that you can trust to not bankrupt the country. And yet, when you hear about these people she wants to include in her inner sanctum, they are amongst the most radically left destructive forces in American politics. But again, she did have the most liberal voting record of any senator in 2019. That's her own track record, so we know where she stands ideologically. Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much, as always.